Right, it is 8:52 on this Wednesday morning. A story on the back of the Irish Independent this morning and a number of other media outlets this week is around the destination of the Lions Tour. Could it possibly actually be coming to the UK? Could there actually be a game in Ireland as well as the UK as well? Delighted to say that we've got Tom English, Chief Sports Writer with BBC Scotland, with us. Tom, good morning to you. How are you doing?
Very good. Yourself?
Very well, thanks. So what's going on here? What are the chances of a Lions game being played in Dublin this year?
I think a reasonable chance. I think, this is murderously complicated, in COVID and all the other ramifications of COVID for professional sport. But as it stands, I spoke to a number of people who are very familiar with the negotiations and the discussions the other day, said the number one contingency plan right now is to move South Africa here, to have the exact same schedule, but to move it to the UK and Ireland. And now that might change, but as it was laid out to me, is you'd have the exact same tour and you'd have test matches, possibly the Principality, Twickenham and Wembley. Now, Wembley kind of took me by surprise. I suspect that they don't want to say Croke Park because they get ahead of themselves and they don't want to upset the GAA. And I would imagine it's in its infancy in terms of planning. But Croke Park would have to imagine would be on the agenda. They would pop the question if they get to that point. They can't. The sense that I get, what they were ruling out was delaying it till 2022. They seem to be dead set against that now. But a UK and Ireland tour is predicated on crowds, some crowds, maybe not all crowds, but some crowds. So that's where they're at the moment, it seems.
So they think that there's more of a chance of getting crowds into a stadium in Ireland or in the UK than there is of getting crowds into a stadium in South Africa?
Yeah. I mean, South Africa are some distance behind the UK and Ireland in terms of the rolling out of the vaccine. That's the way they see it. So they think travelling, and it's upwards of 30,000 Lions fans going around South Africa in July and August. I mean, really, can we realistically see that happening? I just think it's borderline impossible to see that happening. So it depends on the situation in this part of the world, where we're at with the vaccine, where we are with public health, and what they say as well. In terms of going to South Africa, they are not, in terms of the Lions brand and public health, they do not want to be held responsible for another spike in COVID because 30,000 Lions fans have come back having lived it up in South Africa. It's obviously not good for public health, but the way these people talk, it's the Lions brand that would be damaged. If this happened, they're not going to let that happen.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point then. So if it comes down to a case of no fans anywhere, so if we assume that there's going to be no fans in South Africa and we maybe expect that there's not going to be full stadiums in the UK or Ireland come summer, does that leave them in a situation then where they do pick South Africa or that they stick to the Northern Hemisphere, or how does it work in that situation, Tom?
I think they're still trying to figure it out. It's head-wrecking. It was described as head-wrecking to me. The big one is if they can't get fans anywhere, if they can't get fans to South Africa and they can't get fans in stadiums in this part of the world, what did they do? Because, they got very lucrative TV contracts. They got very lucrative sponsorship deals. What did they do with those? Did they just pull the plug and cancel the tour entirely? Did they go back and go back on their position, which is held at the moment, that they'll host it in 2022? But they do seem to be really against that because it clashes with other international tours in 2022. It creates a fixture problem for them. So I think to be honest, everything is up in the air. But the one thing that is coming out fairly clear is that the contingency plan in the event of a normal tour not happening is to reverse the tour and have it over here, if possible.
And Tom, just on that, would there be warm-up games for the South Africans? Would they play Leinster? Because obviously those warm-up games for the Lions would tend to be important. Look, I realise we're very early stages, and I'm asking you to, how long is a piece of string here? But what would that look like?
It's I think, well, the way it was described to me, Ger, was it would be exactly the same tour, only over here. So you would have all of the provincial teams coming over from South Africa.
Right.
You would have the Bulls, you would have all of those coming over, playing in Ireland, England, Scotland, and Wales, and you would have the 3 tests culminating with this. It seems a bit trippy, doesn't it, to have it, but that is what you're looking at.
If you,
but yeah,
if you change your brain for a little minute and think, well, what would that actually be like? That could be pretty amazing.
Well, I mean, I long for the day to see the Lions play the Bulls in Tom Clifford Park, Munster. I mean, that would just be the highlight of my sport viewing life. That would be tremendous. Don't think that's going to happen, mind you, but the notion of it puts a smile on my face in these grim times.
It's totally weird.
Let's just entertain that notion of 2022 for a moment. Like, you can see why people wouldn't want it to happen. It would mean Ireland perhaps go to New Zealand without their Lions involved, which could be fairly brutal viewing as well. Well, actually, maybe Ireland won't have any Lions players, so maybe they'll actually just be at full strength. But like, is this the main reason that these countries actually just don't want to be under strength for that, or is the real reason here, Tom, that actually that might impact a World Cup year? So by the time that the Lions tour ends, you're 12 months out from your warm-up games for the 2023 World Cup.
That was a big factor, yeah, and that kept coming up in the conversations that I had. It's too close to a World Cup, So you're going from Lions tour in 2022 theoretically to a World Cup in 2023. It doesn't work. It doesn't work commercially. It doesn't work on many other levels, they say. So now look, they might be forced to go back on that. Who knows? And they admit themselves that they're really, this is a movable feast. But for sure, right now, reversing the tour and bringing it to UK and Ireland with crowds, with the proviso of some crowds, is the preferred option. But this will change. I mean, this, depending on where we're at with the virus, this could well change.
Just one last one on the logistics of this. So say we assume that we might get a situation where the Lions tour gets cancelled this summer. Does that possibly mean a summer Six Nations? Does that possibly mean that the next Lions tour in 2025 would actually go to South Africa as well? I appreciate that's a two-pronged question.
Well, if it goes to South Africa in 2020, what would that be, 2025? Another thing that has been mentioned is that Australia would be next. And Australia waiting until 2029 for a tour is financial Armageddon for them. So I think there are all sorts of, we all know the importance of Lions tours to these Southern Hemisphere unions, particularly to Australia. If they have to wait until 2029, that's bad news for them. So there's an awful lot of politics going on here. There's an awful lot of discussions going on here about what the right thing to do is. And I think if you asked, when I spoke to a number of the key players the other day, the one thing they're kind of united on at the moment is to try and get the tour played somehow for the history of the Lions and all of that, but also for commercial reasons, because they're locked into a lot of lucrative deals. And what happens if there's no tour? Then they have to give all the money back, and that's not a landscape that any of them will want to contemplate.
No, especially now with the way that we keep hearing about how difficult the financial situation are. Scottish Rugby Union not got a lot of cash at the moment. The Welsh got almost none. England laying people off, and the IRFU are definitely quite open about how difficult it's been for them. So you can see the lines to go ahead. Just a quick question on the actual makeup of the team. Sam Warburton had his team in the paper last week. It's obviously very early. There were 2 Irish and no Scots, and it was basically an England and Wales select with Tadhg Furlong, who hasn't played a lot of rugby, in the front row, and James Ryan. It could be the lone Irish or Scottish player in the team at the moment.
Yeah, look, we're all naming our teams. I mean, I think at the start of the lockdown in March, I got on the phone to Ian McGeechan, and he picked his team, and I think he had 4 Scots in it. So I wonder why that would be. Ian McGeechan, why would he pick 4 Scots? So Sam Warburton, why would he pick a load of Welshmen? It's we all talk about this. Oh, it's 4 nations coming together. It's a load of rubbish. We're all so parochial when it comes to this kind of stuff. So I would have plenty of Irish in them. I wouldn't have Welsh players. How many would I have in there? I'm not sure I'd have any in the team at the moment. You get around to the 6 nations. Fingers crossed it happens. All of that picture could change again. Don't tell the Scots that Sam Warburton hasn't picked any Scots, because this is a very touchy subject for them, Joe.
Is it?
Oh, listen, the Lions are as the concept, they're a kind of a dying breed in Scotland, because Scotland's own fault, because they haven't had enough good players to be on the tour. But there's only 2 selected in the original squad last time, and they threw the toys out of the pram over it wrongly and accused Gatland of anti-Scottishness. I mean, it was skin and hair was flying, But I think Scotland will do better this time. I think they have more live contenders this time than they've had since 1997.
What's the Scottish equivalent of Liveline that they had the national outpouring of grief then? What was that happened when we were busy accusing Gatland of being anti-Irish when he dropped Tricot?
I don't know. I'm not sure we have a Scottish Joe Duffy. I think, I tell you what, the main kind of person who was banging the Gatland is anti-Scottish drum was Ian McLaughlin, Mighty Mouse, who was a mainstay of the 1971 tour to New Zealand. A great prop forward. He went thermonuclear altogether. He lost the run of himself. But no, I think Scotland will do better this time. I hope, because I can't go through that again, lads.